Hi, everybody. My name is Susie Touchinsky. I'm with Adaptive Mobility Services. I'm very excited today to be able to sit down with Shira and Mary Lee with MyndYou. They've got a really interesting products that I feel can be so helpful for our occupational therapy practice and even might be useful for the driving rehab specialist. So I'm going to let Shira first introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Shira Greenstone. I'm an occupational therapist for over 20 years. I did my schooling at the University of Toronto in Canada, and then started my work experience in the United States, where I developed my love of working with the older adults, and then moved to Israel almost 10 years ago, where I continued that in that field.
That's quite a transition from Canada to Israel or United States over.
Well,
What
I'll just
sparked
tell
that?
you this. I'll just tell you this. I took the licensing exam in 3 countries. I'm
Wow.
never moving again.
One was enough for me. One. That's all. Oh, well, thank you so much for being with us. And Mary Lee.
Hi everybody. I'm Mary Lee Haviger. I am the non-OT on this call. I am a speech language pathologist by background. I've been in healthcare leadership roles for about 29 years, and I started working with MyndYou 3 years ago when we did our first pilot study in the United States with a large post-acute provider on the East Coast. So I was so intrigued and fell in love with what they were doing. I decided to come on not long ago as a VP of Clinical Services. Happy to be with you, Susie.
Oh, that's awesome. So, and you and I know each other for just a couple years as well, which is nice to be able to reconnect in different circles. So one of the things that I thought was interesting that you just said is MyndYou's been around for 3 years, more than 3 years?
More than 3 years. I'll start, and then Shira can fill in the blanks. They started in Israel, and after winning an Aging 2.0 award, Ruth started working from Tel Aviv, the CEO, with therapy companies and other companies in the U.S. And we started the first pilot program while Ruth was still in Israel. So it's been probably, I'd say 4.5 years, right, Shira?
Yeah. I also started with that first project, that the pilot project that Mary Lee is referring to. I worked as a occupational therapist using the MyndYou solution to provide services to the older adults in the community who was discharged from in-home rehab. Was
Okay.
very, very exciting and successful.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I think one thing that was important to me to just kind of highlight for the rest of the group is this is a technology that you guys are going to share with us that's been around and established and trialed in other countries and working in other countries. And I think that's so important for us to always think outside the box or even think outside the country when we're looking for solutions for our clients and resources. And so it's kind of newer, maybe a little newer to the United States. It's new to me, but it's an established technology. So I think that's important that people kind of recognize and hold on to. So why don't you just start in, Shira? Can you tell us a little bit about MyndYou? What is MyndYou?
Sure. So as Mary Lee said, MyndYou was started by Ruth and Itai, who both out of their work experiences recognize the need to fill the gaps in healthcare, the gaps in elder healthcare, with some sort of cognitive solution, a way to really monitor the cognitive health of the older adults, because we know that cognition really impacts us, or our health really impacts our cognition, and the brain is a sensor to our health. So if we target the brain and our cognitive health, we can really understand what's going on with our whole body, our physical and mental well-being.
Awesome. So kind of based around the idea, we got to use it or lose it. We got to keep it sharp, and they benefit each other. So I just want to say I had the benefit of meeting Ruth, and when I met her, I thought she was an OT. Can you tell us her background? Because I think that's interesting also. She's got such a level of compassion and very humanitarian and very interesting. And I thought, well, just to share a little bit about the creator herself, and
Sure.
it's her husband, right?
And Itai, her husband,
Yeah.
yes. So Ruth's background is in the business side of things, and she worked on a project that worked in nursing homes with special mattresses for positioning, reduction of pressure sores and things like that. And she recognized that there's really a market there. There's really a need there for the older adults. But the reason why she's so compassionate, not just that OTs are the only compassionate people, but she herself is just a very compassionate, understanding. She takes in the whole picture, but looks at all the small pieces to it as well. And she can really understand and see the needs and able to really pinpoint and recognize where a person needs to intervene or pay attention to.
I love that.
Yeah, she's great. She's a great CEO, great boss, great person to be working for. Very encouraging and very also inspiring.
I think that's another important kind of takeaway for this, is that my experience with MyndYou, with you guys as a group, is it's based around the person, right? It's based around providing something that's helpful, that's meaningful. It's not just about the technology. I mean, the technology, you guys will see, enables us to understand so much more, but it's still that human factor. And I know, Mary Lee, when you and I have talked about it, it's about the human factor. It's about that connection. It's about understanding still the person on the other end of the technology. And to me, just as a business owner, kindness and compassion is so important. So one more reason why I really enjoy connecting with MyndYou.
So it's an important point that you're making, because we know that society is definitely moving more towards computers and programs to take over the roles of humans. But really, that interaction with the clients, with the patients, the interaction is so important. The human touch is still such an important piece of this, and MyndYou doesn't take that away. MyndYou just enhances that by providing the technology behind that, but still allows for that human interaction, which is so important.
I love it. So why don't you jump in and show us a little bit? Now I'm hoping everyone's a little excited.
Yeah. Okay, so they recognized again that there was the need for a solution that was general enough that it really was able to go across different demographics and different illnesses and different lifestyles, but passive enough that it didn't really interfere with the privacy of the person, and holistic enough because we know each individual reacts differently to their illnesses. So they developed the MyndYou solution. Now, the MyndYou solution in a nutshell is this. MyndYou uses artificial intelligence to monitor the cognitive changes in the older adult. Now, I said that very simply. We use data that we collect from two sources, from the MyndYou platform or from the MyndYou mobile app. We gather data from that. That data is run through the MyndYou complexity engine, and that information is used to let us know if there's something going on. So from the MyndYou platform, we collect voice data through calls. From the MyndYou app, the mobile app, we're collecting information from drive, walk, and voice patterns, and eventually sleep patterns. So that's collecting data on a day-to-day basis. And the platform is collecting data when phone calls are made. Now, what's important to point out here is that each person develops their own baseline. So Mary Lee will have a different baseline than me, than you, Susie. Everyone will have their own baseline, and it's individual to each person. What happens then is this data that's coming in through the complexity engine is then compared to that baseline. And when the engine realizes that there's changes in patterns in the voice, the drive, the walk, it alerts us that something's going on. It flags us that there's an anomaly and we need to take action.
Gotcha. So for example, if typically I walk to the bus stop every day. I walk to the car, I've got a typical walking pattern for myself. If I decide on New Year's Day that I'm starting a new habit and running, it's going to spike as an anomaly, something different, right? Because that's out of my habit or routine. Or if I were to come down with the flu and I stop moving, or I'm developing a cold and I'm moving even less, that's the kind of thing it's going to pick up.
So yes, it's going to pick up changes in your patterns. It's not, we can't say specific patterns. We can't say, oh, because you started running, that's going to trigger an anomaly, because it's a whole compilation of things. It's not just one thing that we're looking at. But yes, certain things, if a person's not feeling well and not getting out, or if a person's slowing down, or if a person had a fall, that creates, some sort of equation that the engine comes up with, and that's compared to baseline and alerts us.
Gotcha.
And in a second, I'd like to show you actually what I mean by this. So when I say patterns, we also refer to it as music, because as human beings, we create music. Our patterns are music. So when we look here, we can see the complexity continuum. Now we see beeps. Now beeps are like what robots do. Beep, beep, right? There's no change in that. It's very consistent, very robotic. Or we have noise, which has no patterns or rhyme or reason to it. It's all over the place. But then we have the human, and the human creates music because we're dynamic and amazing and complex. We put together a video that really explains it nicely, and I'd like to show that.
Yeah,
I hope that you can hear it clearly. I'll put it as loud as I can.
Did you know that you're constantly creating your own music without even noticing? Robots do not generate music. People do. We all generate unique music by the way we speak, act, and move. This music evolves throughout our lives according to the cognitive changes we experience. MyndYou knows how to listen to these changes. MyndYou listens to the music of our walking, listens to the music of our driving, listens to the music of our sleep. MyndYou listens to the music of our voice.
MyndYou escucha nuestra música.
MyndYou מקשיבה למוזיקה שלנו.
MyndYouは私たちの音楽を聴きます。
We all deserve personalized care, tailored to our unique music. MyndYou, revolutionizing cognitive-driven care.
So if I'm understanding all of this correctly, and we're talking about music, I think that's kind of an important piece to understand, because for me, my brain, when we're talking about technology and we're talking about apps, my brain immediately goes to privacy, right? What's being collected on the app, what information's being collected, where is it being stored, what's happening to that stuff. So when we talk about an app that's looking at our movement, is it tracking where I'm going, or the voice, is it listening to what I'm saying? And if I'm understanding you correctly, the idea behind the music is it's not recording my words, it's looking to my rhythm and my pattern and what I'm creating as a human, and not necessarily pulling that private information about what specifically I'm doing or going, where I'm going or saying. Is that correct?
Yes, it doesn't listen to the content, it's listening to the music. Exactly, you got it exactly correct. But I'll just say on a side point that MyndYou has very clear privacy policy that they use, and that's available on our website for anybody that's interested in reading more about it. But our platform is HIPAA compliant. So any information that is stored there is all HIPAA compliant, and the app also follows the policies of the United States.
Beautiful. Yeah, important for us when we're thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
What technology we're allowing in.
Yeah, for sure. And we also get consent.
Beautiful.
We explain it and we get consent from everybody. Yeah, we're not just eavesdropping on people and stuff like that. They understand what they're getting involved in, and they give us consent.
Beautiful. So you said you can gather the information through a phone call or through the app. Can you show us a little bit about that, or how that works?
Sure. Okay. So the app. Now, in terms of the app, we gather from the app information on drive patterns, walk patterns, and voice patterns. And it's passively gathered. The individual who has the app downloaded on their phone has to download it one time, and then they're free to go. It's just passively gathering this information and sending it to the platform where the therapist involved can see the graphs to let them know if there's any issues going on. So I wanted to show you some examples of graphs that we have. For example, the drive analytics graph. So here you see we have a client who had some anomalies, and if you see it says general score, because that's where the anomalies show up. It's not a specific thing, it's a general thing because it's all different factors. So it could be that one day maybe, you know, a person slowed down and she won't have an anomaly, but another day she slowed down and will have an anomaly because it's not just the slowing down, it's the whole picture. It's the music.
Right, right.
So here we have an example of anomalies for a client who actually had been complaining of some neck and shoulder pain, and that was impacting her ability to drive. She is a very independent woman who drives everywhere, doesn't walk very much, and she was continuing to drive, but it was more challenging for her. After she sought out some medical help and, you know, was had her pain under control, you see that things returned to green. Things returned to normal for her. And in this way, we see like what was actually happening really was detected by the platform. The next example I have is a walk anomaly. Okay, so this is the walk analytics for a gentleman of ours who had 2 falls. Okay, so he had the first fall. He went and sought medical attention and they didn't find anything, and he actually started to feel better. But then the same feelings that he was having the first time came back, but came back full force. And he had a second fall, and he actually went to the hospital where they did further testing and discovered he had an infection. And we know how infections impact the older adult. It could be something little tiny thing and forget it. Everything changes.
That's right.
It also, so this person had an infection, went on antibiotics, but also the family reports a significant change in what they see even without an app telling them in him slowing down. We see that the app is supporting this with data and analytics and saying, oh, definitely there's something going on, and to further investigate what is going on. Now, at this point, at the end, we see here that he actually is starting to feel better and definitely improving, but he still has a little bit of a ways to go. But the app is important in this way, the walk and the drive, because it gives us information on a day-to-day basis. It's not just from a phone call, which is amazing and great, and we've had a lot of success with that, and that's what I was very much involved in the beginning. But we've enhanced that by also having this data coming in from the app, and it gives us the full picture of the functional abilities of the person, because walk and drive are very functional activities that an adult does on an almost day-to-day basis, certainly walking, and certainly the person who doesn't want to walk, driving. So here we are getting all this information to alert us in between these phone calls that we're making to be on top of the person.
So I could see this being really important for somebody who may live more remotely, or if I have a parent, an older parent, and I'm not around, we're in a different state, and I don't know who's checking in on mom. Many of her friends have passed away. I want to know that information. I could see this being really helpful in that way as well. And I have to tell you, as a driving Rio specialist, I always love the connections between considerations for walking and driving. There's such a powerful connection there. The AAA Foundation came out with, increased risk of falls is actually linked to increased crash risk. And it's just, I think that's right on. I think that's so important that you guys are looking at both those pieces.
I just wanted to add to something that you said. You said, you can see this being really good for a person who lives alone, more remote. But I'll tell you, we've had amazing success also with people who live with a spouse, people who have children that live nearby. Everyone's busy.
Yeah,
Or also, when you live with someone, you don't notice changes. You don't
true.
necessarily pick up on those subtle changes, and the subtle changes is what the app and what we're picking up on, these changes that the naked eye doesn't see, the changes that we don't notice ourselves, but the analytics is showing us so that we can intervene before it becomes a problem.
That's a beautiful point. And you know what? I was just thinking as you said that, even if my mom and I lived in the same town, it would drive her bananas for me to check in on her every day. But if I had an app, I could take a look at it. And actually, one of the most recent people I talked to about MyndYou, her sister's super involved. Both of them are in their late 70s. And the woman that I was working with, there's concern about mild cognitive impairment. It's not it truly is a mild cognitive impairment. And it was really interesting because lots and lots of concern around driving. And I saw her twice and she did beautifully. And it was interesting because we said, okay, we understand why there's concern. We, from an objective standpoint, don't have a reason for you to stop driving, right? So we were talking about the MyndYou app because the sister says, I want to be her sister. I don't want to check on her every day. And I said, I've got the perfect thing for you. She's somebody that as soon as I get your brochure, she's waiting for it at the office. She said, okay, I need something in paper to look at. Okay, we'll get you something in paper to look at to go with it. But another great way you can have information without being intrusive. And honestly, I wouldn't want somebody asking me every day either, right?
Right. No, that's definitely true. And this way, it doesn't even have to be the family member. It can be the therapist, the care professional who's monitoring. The family doesn't have to be involved in that way at all. They can just be the loved one. They don't need to be the policeman. And I think that's a very important point that you bring up also, because they want to ensure the safety of their loved one, but they don't necessarily want to be the one that has to worry and decide those things.
Right.
So if you have objective measures, something that's telling you, okay, there's something going on, that's when you can start to intervene. But then you don't need to worry in the in between. You don't need to worry, I need to watch out for this and that. That something's got your back, something's watching out for you, and then you can take that breather and just give the love and attention that you want to.
I love that. So I have a question then. So if somebody has the app, I'm their occupational therapist, how would I see this data? Do I need to work for MyndYou to see the data? How does that kind of interaction work?
So yes, the data is on the MyndYou platform. It's fed into the platform on different pages of the platform. So you get the voice analytics, the drive analytics, and the walk analytics. And the person, will have their own page. You don't necessarily have to make phone calls to them through the platform, but that's where everything is seen through the platform.
Okay, so I could potentially get like a login and go into the platform and be able to see things, like if someone gives me permission. Can
Yes.
someone's platform also be shared with their physician, their social worker, their, the other service providers supporting them? Can it be multiple users?
There is the possibility for multiple users. It just depends on what sort of agreement is made with the person who has access to it. So whatever sort of agreement is made between MyndYou and that individual.
Okay, but what's important is when you participate in MyndYou, if someone's a client of MyndYou, do they get a MyndYou OT or a MyndYou nurse that's watching the data also?
So yes, we have what we refer to as the marketplace section of MyndYou, where we have occupational therapists who are able to make phone calls to do cognitive training exercises, as well as supervise the information that's coming in, and be in touch with the clients and figure out what's going on and give steps to take in order to deal with any issues, to take actionable steps to stop the anomaly from continuing.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. So we've got just a couple more minutes. Tell us how, so as an occupational therapy provider, how do you see this being used in treatment? Can you give us an example or maybe even the ideal person?
Sure. I have actually a couple slides that I want to show you that really will highlight how the platform is used for occupational therapists.
Beautiful.
Okay. On the platform, from the voice analytics, we get two different kinds of graphs. We get in-call anomaly graphs and long-term anomaly graphs, as you can see these two here. The in-call anomaly graphs are graphs that show up right after a phone call, after a clinician has done cognitive training with the older adults or with their clients. If you can see here, the green parts are parts that the clinician has tagged that he or she are doing cognitive training exercises. And if you see all these red dots, those indicate anomalies. So it indicates that the exercise was kind of the just right fit for the person because it wasn't too easy. We didn't have too many blues. And the reds indicates that, you know, it was challenging for them. The long-term anomaly graphs are more related to cognition and health, and those are the voice calls, and the analytics are compared from call to baseline. So when we have a yellow or red bar, that indicates there's an anomaly and a call for action. The green indicates that there's no issues. So I want to give you a case study, how we use the in-call anomaly graphs, because I think that's really very applicable to the occupational therapist. So here we have a case study where client M lives in a retirement facility. She has multiple chronic health issues, including some mild dementia, and she also has difficulty walking distances, so she needs some help with that. Now, if you see on all these in-call anomaly graphs, there are a lot of anomalies, okay? Has difficulty focusing and concentrating, and she's all over the place, and there's a lot of anomalies when she's doing cognitive training. Now you'll see here an example of her completing a familiar task. Her therapist recognized that she was having this trouble focusing and decided, okay, I'm going to give her some familiar tasks to do, and let's see how she does here. Now this was blind, meaning the therapist didn't see this in-call anomaly graph until after the call. But if you see her call notes, she writes there was an improvement in focus over time. She did 100%. So the therapist subjectively was able to feel a difference, but also objectively with the data, she was able to see an improvement. And the same thing when she realized that she needs to give her cues to focus. She also wrote in her notes she was less impulsive, more focused, and the graphs also showed that and backed up what she felt, but objectively.
That's so fascinating.
So, yeah, it's really, and I use this a lot because when I do cognitive training, what I notice is I notice what I want to see is a familiar task. I see a lot more blues.
Sure.
When I first do the task, a lot more reds. And what I've seen on different ones, like let's say I gave the person 5 things to remember, and then I added on another 5 things. The first 5 things they remembered much more because we reviewed it so many more times than the next 5 things. And I see that on the graph that it's blue, 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 and then it goes red when it gets to the harder things. Right. And that shows me the just right fit for them, that it's working. Fascinating.
So have you utilized your graphs to support your documentation for reimbursement?
Mary,
I'll take yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking about kind of multiple things like the graphs, but also if we're seeing a decline in somebody, from the data, but we don't maybe have a full reason to go in on them, does it help with justification? Have you guys used in that means?
We have not. That is a great idea. And maybe in the future, that could be something that a clinician who treats through telehealth can do. Yes. But we have not. Our focus, like Shira said, is really on, keeping people healthy, well, and at home, and giving given patients a quiet comfort to know something is monitoring them. But I think that is an absolute use case. And Shira and I would love to do a research project with the university or with a group of clinicians out there to test this in that type of use case. Right, Shira? We'd love it.
We love it.
Well, there you go. There's a plug. If you're listening to this and you're interested in this area, that'd be amazing. We'll make sure your contacts are included. So we have just a couple more minutes because I want to be respectful of your time. What are your final thoughts? What are some final things you'd like to share with us about MyndYou?
So I think MyndYou has a place for occupational therapists in many, many areas. In the driving sector, I think that the app is a very important tool for you to help you monitor your clients in between their visits to you. Because I think, here you have the person come, they do a test, you feel that they're safe, but you want to know how they're doing in between the visits. And I think that the driving part of it is a very important tool for you. And like you said, the link between walk and drive also. So I think that also is an important thing. But the platform itself is a very amazing tool for occupational therapists to use in private practice as a way to provide services to remote people who have trouble getting into the office, or as another tool in between clinic visits. You can do a platform phone call and do cognitive training, so the person doesn't have to come into the clinic every week. And it's also a great tool to monitor people that you've discharged to make sure that they don't need to come back in to get services. So I think there's so many uses of it, and I probably haven't even touched on all of them, but I think that those are some main ones. And I think that it's a great tool for occupational therapists, and from personal experience, it's an amazing tool that really has positives for the clinician as well as for the recipient. I've only gotten positive feedback from all the clients that I've used it on, and it's hard to say goodbye when we're done, because we've developed such a strong therapeutic relationship by this kind of anonymous interaction, and being able to help people in the real life setting is just amazing. Just being able to help them cope and be functional on a daily basis.
I love that. And it's just such a neat tool, and I get excited because you're excited. How about you, Mary Lee? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, for me, I second everything Shira said. I think the exciting thing about MyndYou, I always go back to that quiet comfort, and I always see through the eyes of my mom when she was still with us. And had she had MyndYou, and had I had a way to passively monitor her mobility and her voice, because we all traveled, Susie, maybe her outcome would have been different. So for me, it's always about keeping people healthy, well, and where they want to be, which is their home, for as long as possible. So I see MyndYou as a tool to do that.
I love that. I'm going to wrap us up. I can't thank you both enough. This is fantastic.